Poor little couch. I bet this is the first time you've been sat on by a buffalo.
From the time television cameras were first turned on, the small screen has showcased the talent and artistry of African Americans.
You're looking at a professional.
In some of the most memorable scenes in television drama.
Will you knock it off, man?
Many of the great show-stopping performances in TV variety.
Gee whiz, for an opportunity like this, we've got to do something dramatic.
And some of comedy television's funniest moments.
Dynamite!
What you talking about, Willie?
African Americans have entertained the world and changed the medium.
What's all the bags for? You're not moving back in, are you?
Inside TV Land presents a special three-part series spotlighting African Americans in television drama, variety, and comedy. On this installment of our series...
Oh, Horton!
I would no sooner try to take Amos and Andy off the air than I would try to take Aunt Jemima off of a pancake box.
Uh-oh.
Sanford and Son set a precedent for the way so many African-American shows are written.
Cosby is a major breakthrough for us.
Oh, yo, the plane ride was stupid.
First time that I was really acting was on the set of the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
When I was a kid, I got a rat for Christmas, and that was the year I was good.
Things are changing now, and people are starting to understand that it's just about being funny.
Now, Inside TV Land presents a laugh-filled look at the inspired lunacy and legendary achievements of African Americans in television comedy.
Hello, Woody. Goodbye, Woody.
From Bill Cosby to Diane Carroll, from Guillaume to Gibbs, JJ to DL, from Red Fox to Jamie Foxx, black performers have made their hilarious mark in television comedy.
Well, how come we overcame and nobody told me?
And here's our family on a rare night out to dinner at the Colonel's. We were so poor we had to lick other people's fingers.
I apologize, Esther, for slamming the door in your face.
Well, that's better.
But for African Americans working in situation comedy, the situation hasn't always been funny, and the struggle to become primetime players has been an ongoing battle.
We keep going forward and then we go back. Or we go forward and then we go for a span where we don't exist.
When blacks did exist in the early years of situation comedy, they often played in the background, getting laughs as maids and butlers.
I resent that.
Now, shall I fix you that sandwich?
Yeah. Black people have always been held to task for playing those roles. You either don't play the role and don't eat or do something else for a living, or you try to make a difference, play the role with dignity.
There was a time when black actors didn't even get all the black roles. When radio comedies were popular in the 1930s and 40s, African-American characters in hit shows like Amos and Andy were played by white actors.
And we done come up here with a bottle that I either gonna pop Andy on the head with or hit one of these cars with.
Not what I'm looking you in.
They would never hire back in those days.
With the advent of television, viewers could see as well as hear their favorite comedies, and black actors made their comic TV entrance.
They say everything comes to them that wait. But there's only one thing I ever got from waiting. More weight.
In 1950, celebrated singer and actress Ethel Waters took on the title role in Beulah. In the series, Waters played a kindly maid working for a white family.
The Beulah Show.
She was nice, an Earth Mother type, but still, you know, the massa was Mr. Harry and his wife, Miss Alice.
You won't mind taking care of little Effie for a few hours, will you, Beulah?
She worked contentedly for this white family. She was caught up in their lives.
The character of Beulah was offensive to me because of the context. You didn't see on another channel, on another show, a black person doing something different or doing anything at all.
Ethel Waters didn't play the role for long.
She played Beulah for a little over a year, and then she left. And when she left, Jet magazine said that she was sick of being in the white folks' kitchen.
Waters was replaced in the role by Hattie McDaniel, who'd won an Oscar for Gone with the Wind.
Jeepers, Beulah, can you dance? Can I dance? Donnie, when the beat's right, I just take off.
When illness forced McDaniel to quit, another well-known actress, Louise Beavers, took over the role.
If marriages are made in heaven, My guardian angel has sure been loafing on the job.
The irony of Beulah, here you have really these three very important African-American character actresses working in the movies, and late in their careers on TV, they end up playing the same ditzy black maid role.
A year after Beulah debuted on the small screen, the television version of Amos and Andy premiered in '51. The series featured TV's first all-black cast.
The Legend of Hiawatha by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Took three fellas to write this, huh?
Amos and Andy featured the weekly misadventures of two Harlem men and their get-rich-quick schemes. Alvin Childress and Spencer Williams Jr. played Amos and Andy. As it was on the radio, the show became a hit on TV.
Oh, Horton!
All of us talk about Amos and Andy and everything else, but I see everybody, including hip-hop dudes and a lot of people I know, you know, big stars carrying the tapes around because they had some funny material on there. They really did.
Your lover is here.
Eddie Murphy and I still watch it because they were funny. Amos and Andy, those actors, they were funny.
The characters were outrageous stereotypes. The chiseling lawyer, the lazy bum. Only the cab driver had any sense at all.
Well, there's been a lot of talk going on around town that I ain't very smart, that my head is empty. And this will prove to everybody that there's nothing in it.
Amos and Andy had long been a target of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People.
It took us 6 years fighting CBS in the 50s to get them to pull Amos and Andy out of syndication.
The NAACP succeeded in getting the network to drop the series in 1953. But according to cast member Nick Stewart, the battle against Amos and Andy was short-sighted.
If I didn't take those roles, you would have had no Black Theater, you would have had no Sidney Poitier, you would have had nobody. I took the money I earned and built the first and longest existing Black Theater in America.
It helped to ensure that it was possible to be in the industry. Without those kinds of beginners, there wouldn't be anybody else. I mean, somebody has to begin it, right?
Would you like me to fix you a sandwich? No.
In the mid-1950s, Rochester was getting laughs every week on The Jack Benny Show. Eddie Anderson's role as Benny's valet was as big a hit on TV as it had been on the radio.
If you must sleep during a television show, why does it have to be mine? Why don't you sleep when Bob Hope is on?
I tried that, but the laughs kept waking me up.
Another domestic role made Amanda Randolph a sitcom star. She played yet another housekeeper on Make Room for Daddy, but her character still provoked some controversy.
Used to get a lot of hate mail whenever Danny Thomas put his arm around a man. That people would send in mail like, I want to see a white man making love to a gorilla, I'll go to a freak show, and so on. Hate mail, hate mail.
Racial tensions were rising in the early 60s as the civil rights movement advanced in the face of violent resistance. In 1967, TV comedy writer Hal Cantor attended a speech by NAACP Executive Director Roy Wilkins.
And I wondered what I personally could do to help further the aims of his organization. The one weapon at my command was the gift of laughter.
Cantor had been a writer on Amos and Andy back in the 50s. A decade later, he created a more progressive black sitcom. When he turned in his pilot script about a successful single mother raising a child, Cantor withheld some vital information about his lead characters.
I did not mention the color of their skin because I knew that if I had said, this is a series about a small black family, they wouldn't even read it.
On page 12 of the script, NBC learned that Julia was African American and gave Hal Cantor the green light to make TV history. In the fall of 1968, Julia made its debut on NBC. The network had taken a risk, and the risk paid off.
When the show was reviewed so beautifully, I was stunned. And then when we became the #1 Nielsen, I was stunned again.
Several stations in the South refused to put the show on the air, but after 3 weeks, they were forced to put Julia on the air.
Nearly 2 long decades after Beulah's TV debut, Diane Carroll's Julia became a bold new role model.
I will not have my son shining shoes in this building or anyplace else. I
put myself through nursing school to ensure his future, and his father's insurance money is in a trust fund to educate him for a life of dignity and pride.
To see such a beautiful sister on TV every week with her son, that was something wonderful for all of us to see.
You're the only man I've got.
Don't worry, Mama. We'll find you another.
It's like a fantasy that you want to be a part of. I wanted to be a part of that. I wanted to, have that experience.
The image of an upscale professional black woman confounded critics on both sides of the political and racial divide.
White liberals attacked us constantly, saying that we were presenting an unrealistic image of the black community.
She was a single mom, and she was a career woman, and people said blacks didn't do that. Black people said blacks didn't do that.
Criticism and controversy took their toll on Diahann Carroll.
I went to the hospital twice. I was there for a matter of days each time. Very thin, very nervous, and stressed, very stressed. My life was threatened. My child's life was threatened.
By 1971, just 3 years after Julia shook up the sitcom world, the star of the show was ready to walk away.
The culture had changed, and I think that affected us. We were a little old-fashioned.
Julia went off the air, but she had already changed the face of TV comedy.
The impact of that is obvious anytime you turn on television and you see black faces, because she opened the door for all of the black shows that are now current. We couldn't get black people on the air. Julia came along to prove that white people will watch black people on television.
Boy, the way Glenn Miller played.
Coming up, bigotry and big laughs are all in the family.
Norman Lear was brilliant at having the courage to bring that conversation into our living room.
Hey, you're being colored. Well, I know you had no choice in that.
When we return with more of Inside TV Land.
They overcame controversy and conflict to change the face of television. In honor of Black History Month, TV Land presents a landmark 3-part series. Inside stories from groundbreakers and those who followed them. Stories of pride, prejudice,
My life was threatened.
and progress.
I see how far we really have come. I also see how far we need to go.
Inside TV Land, African Americans in television. Every Friday in February at 9 p.m. on TV Land. This TV Land event is brought to you by Toyota and Kool-Aid.
Is pot calling the black a kettle?
More and more Americans were buying color TV sets in the early 1970s, and they were seeing more and more people of color when they turned those TVs on.
I quit.
As ABC's landmark comedy series Julia ended its 3-year run in the spring of 1971, a provocative new sitcom was in its first shocking season.
If we look back at Julia and the whole thing of people wanting Julia to deal more with race, and it really, can the sitcom do that each week? And All in the Family showed that the sitcom could deal with social topics.
Writer-producers Norman Lear and Bud Yorkin based All in the Family on a British television hit.
I had read about a British series called Till Death Us Do Part, about a bigoted father and son in this case.
There's one thing Archie Bunker ain't never going to do, and that's break bread with no jungle bunnies.
It was the funniest half-hour comedy that I'd ever seen.
Fred Silverman sits down, watches it, says, this thing's going on CBS.
The idea of putting something on the air which broke every rule in the book that could end up being a breakthrough show that could change the content forever of the half-hour comedy show was just so appealing.
Archie Bunker, the lovable bigot, burst onto the American scene when All in the Family premiered in January 1971.
Boy, the way Glenn Miller played.
Songs that made the hit parade.
The liberals thought we were a dangerous show because they thought we were promoting racism and bigotry, and we were making those things acceptable. I think they were wrong, and I think time has proved that they were a little too hasty and too fearful at that time.
All in the Family changed television because before All in the Family, the world hadn't made its way into the sitcom, and with All in the Family, the world did. It got us talking about this issue of race and challenging the standard norms
and identifying bigotry and bigots as people that come in all colors.
No episode of All in the Family got people talking more than the one featuring Sammy Davis Jr.
Sammy pleaded, begged, wanted to sit with me for hours to talk about ideas because he had to do the show.
Hey, you're being colored. Well, I know you had no choice in that. But whatever made you turn Jew?
Archie Bunker was a big fan of Sammy Davis Jr., but Sammy Davis Jr. is black, and he doesn't like black people. And so this enormous conflict is set up in him.
Now, on three, okay? 1, 2, 3.
When Sammy kissed Archie, it might be as long a laugh as we've ever seen on television.
By the end of its first season, All in the Family was the #1 show on TV, and Lear and Yorkin were ready to turn another British sitcom into an American hit. Steptoe and Son revolved around father and son junk dealers. Sanford and Son would give comedian Red Fox the role of his life.
Goodbye, dear.
Oh, you call me dear?
Why should I call you dear? You look like Bambi's father.
Red Fox was a real clown. He could walk into a room and tell you your mother died when you killed her.
Poor little Walls. I feel so sorry for you to have to stay here and hear the language that comes out of this house.
Poor Wall. You ought to be glad you ain't got no eyes to see who's talking to you.
Sanford and Son debuted on NBC in the fall of '72 and became the first sitcom since Amos and Andy to hit the top 10 with 2 black men in the leads.
Sanford and Son was really enjoyable. Just go with it. Just take the ride.
Sanford and Son, I think, was brilliant. He's the first cat that I saw on television that looked like I could know him.
We get letters like, why did there have to be 2 junk men? And we write the answers that the story came from 2 white junk men in England. And we couldn't be nuclear physicists with a junkyard.
Sanford and Son was Norman Lear's second hit show in a row. Good Times began with a pilot script written by Eric Monte about a family living in a Chicago housing project.
One note I got invariably in every meeting without fail was, you got to get rid of the father. A strong black man in a sitcom don't work. And I was in the know. We are not going to do this show without a father.
Monte's script was developed into a spin-off series featuring Esther Roll's Florida character from Lear's third hit comedy Maude. In Good Times, John Amos played Florida's overworked husband, and Jimmy Walker played her offbeat teenage son.
We attacked every issue. We did sexual problems, we did poverty, we did gangs.
With its debut in '74, Good Times became Lear's 4th hit sitcom in a row.
You're seeing a black family living in the projects, carrying on their lives. I thought that show really was, for its time, a pretty good show.
It was grounded in reality with Esther Roll and John Amos.
James, don't worry about it. It'll all work out. Where there is a will, there is a way.
Yeah, well, Will ain't been around here lately, and I don't see no way.
And there was a takeoff element in the show.
Here I am!
Jimmy Walker, playing JJ, with his dynamite, just caught on.
18 today, happy, bright, narrow man, and pure dynamite!
A few months into the show's first season, stand-up comedian Jimmy Walker became the show's breakout star.
I'm telling you, got the brains, and I got all the talent and good looks.
Jimmy Walker was funny. I mean, his earlobes were funny, his elbows were funny. He was funny.
Dynamite!
I did it one day in rehearsals, the dynamite thing. And John Rich said to me, says, that's it. That's our hook, man.
Dynamite became a popular catchphrase, but Walker's JJ character caught flack from some critics.
The black community may dislike the JJ character because that's what they were told by the black press and by other black actors who think the character is a negative character.
John Amos leaves the show, insulted by this overemphasis of the minstrel character.
Series creator Eric Monte quit, complaining that the show's white writers were not capturing the black experience.
Every joke they wanted to do was Yaz's eyes going to do this, and Yaz's boss, and Yaz's man, eyes going down by the river. That was actually a line in the show.
Stung by African-American criticism of Good Times, Lear came up with yet another All in the Family spinoff.
The Jeffersons was as much a result of the cry that why is the only black show that's doing as well as it is focused around a man who has 2 jobs. Why isn't there any black family that's doing better than that?
Remember, I work my way from the bottom up to the top. So does a gopher.
Coming up, the series that saved the network and brought the sitcom back to life.
My boy. It being a black family never came out of his lips because this just happened to be a family.
When we return with more of Inside TV Land. You're watching Inside TV Land, African Americans in television comedy. Stay tuned.
Well, we're moving on now to the time.
With the debut of the Jeffersons in the fall of '75, Norman Lear scored yet another hit by turning racial issues into a laughing matter. And by making George Jefferson a successful businessman with a family, Lear silenced his critics.
He could have stopped me before I made a damn fool out of myself. Well, he didn't know you when you were first born.
I can't remember any time I thought that the African-American community was upset with the Jeffersons or didn't think they were accurately portraying these characters.
I like seeing a black man with his wife, with the kids, whatever, you know. I like that. I just like seeing us.
I wasn't trying to represent. I was glad to be working. No, we wasn't given a hard time. No one challenged us about anything. No, they accepted whatever we brought them.
Right. Comedy. That's a perfect example, by the way, of a show that had an African-American lead, was watched by whites, was watched by blacks, was watched by everybody.
Black people said, that's how it is. Let them tell it the way it is. And so that show went down in history.
Marla Gibbs played the Jeffersons' maid, but her character failed to stir up the usual controversy with viewers and critics.
That's the door, Florence.
It sure is. They saw her as somebody who was independent, somebody who was strong. They didn't see her as a derogatory character.
The Jeffersons also broke ground as the first sitcom to feature a racially mixed couple.
Zebra City. He's white, she's black, the kids are medium rare.
The question always arises, well, how did the networks accept it, and what had happened with America when it happened? It was, they hadn't seen it before and so forth. The fact is, nothing happened.
You know, we talk about Sanford, the Jeffersons, Good Times. Those shows are still on. Reruns. Phenomenal. All those shows are breakthrough.
Norman Lear had begun the decade by shocking the nation with a comedy about bigotry and racism. By the mid-'70s, multiracial casts of characters were laughing together on sitcoms like WKRP in Cincinnati and Barney Miller.
Barney Miller was the avenue to freedom for a lot of expression in terms of ethnicity, because of the regulars as well as all the people who were guests and so on.
Doors were opening for African Americans in television comedy.
Hey, Raj, how you doing? Hey, Raj, what's happening?
Good Times co-creator Eric Monty launched a new series in 1976. Based on Monty's film Cooley High, What's Happening found laughter in the lives of 3 African American teens.
What's Happening is white people's version of Cooley High. We had this character named Cochise that was this big debonair girl killer. They didn't want little white girls screaming over a black guy on television, so they took him out and they replaced him with Leroy.
They said they were looking for a thin white guy. Like I said at the time, I was black, I'm still black, but I was weighing 300 pounds. So I just made up a character. I didn't have anything to lose. You wearing Brave Bull? So am I.
Well, how come it smells different on you than it does on me?
You probably took a shower first.
Black comic characters now came in all sizes, from ultra-large to extra short.
Who'd you talking about?
NBC's 1978 series Different Strokes featured Gary Coleman and Todd Bridges as 2 young boys adopted by a wealthy white businessman.
Sorry to keep you waiting, Mr. Drummond. Yeah, we would have been here sooner, but we're up there counting our blessings.
We've got Gary Coleman, as good as he was. He's set in a white family. Why did he have a white family?
So you better watch it, Turkey.
With the success of Different Strokes, the diminutive Gary Coleman became a very big star. Before long, another white TV family adopted Webster. By the early 1980s, black actors were back in supporting roles. On Soap, Robert Guillaume played a butler for a wealthy family. It was a traditional servant role with a defiant twist.
I sort of think of Benson as the revenge of Set and Fetch It, where he was fawning and servile. Benson could be considered arrogant.
Meanwhile, on NBC's Gimme a Break, singer Nell Carter played another domestic role that evoked the bad old days.
Give me a break, I sure deserve it.
It's the familiar Beulah role where she moves in with a cranky old ex-cop as his maid and takes care of his children. And she is the nurturing mammy figure.
Is somebody at the door?
Probably. I know I make a lot of people upset because they saw the role in Give Me a Break as a maid. When actually they had really listened or paid attention to the show, the premise was the mother was my best friend, and she wanted me to raise those children. I'm going to teach you how to box. Come on. But you're a girl. Honey, I am woman. Come on.
Carter and other black actors were grateful for any part in a situation comedy. By the mid-'80s, sitcoms were losing viewership and networks were losing faith in the genre.
The state of the sitcom at that point was pretty bad, actually. There was not one comedy in the top 10 in television at that moment. Brandon Tartikoff, who was running NBC at the time, said, this is strange.
Then, one night in '84, Brandon Tartikoff tuned in his network's Tonight Show to watch Bill Cosby fill in for Johnny Carson. Tartikoff was inspired by the veteran comedian's family-oriented comedy.
One of the things that you learn when you become a parent is the horrible thought and the reality that your children will be your children for the rest of your life.
NBC soon met with producers Tom Warner and Marcy Carsey to discuss concepts for a possible Cosby comedy.
I remember them saying the essence of the show is there's a war between parents and children. This is about a man who's determined not to lose. I went, well, that's a character. That's great.
Bill Cosby had very definite ideas about the kind of character and the kind of comedy he wanted to present.
We felt that writers and producers didn't like African-American people. And you could see it in the writing. I wanted to be in charge to show a love for the African-American people, also to show a respect for the Caucasian counterparts who came through.
This is your graduation. This is a special day.
Cosby's Dr. Cliff Huxtable and his lawyer wife, played by Felicia Rashad, were an upper-middle-class couple raising 4 kids in their New York brownstone. The Cosby Show became a top 5 hit from the night it premiered in the fall of '84.
Listen, what's all the bags for? You're not moving back in, are you?
No one really had any idea that this show was going to take off the way it did. I remember everyone just being so amazed at the ratings.
Cosby is a major breakthrough for us. The Huxtable family was pure genius. Mom around?
Yeah, she's in the kitchen.
Great. I need to talk to somebody about something.
Vanessa?
Yeah?
What am I, a bag of oats?
The Cosby Show showed the world that some of us can and do make it. But it showed love between a professional woman and a professional man.
Then you better be ready to do some heavy apologizing and begging for forgiveness.
We shall see.
We shall see what we shall see, what humiliation from thee.
Cosby took a very hands-on approach with the series throughout its popular 8-year run.
He was looking always to make sure that it was the truth of human circumstance and human behavior that was being examined, that was being explored.
There were always these signs and symbols that this was a black family.
It must have been great knowing you guys were going to be part of history.
There's an episode where Theo has to do a paper on the March on Washington, and his grandparents were there, and they actually had gone to the March on Washington in 1963, and they reminisce.
Glory, glory. August 28, 1963 was a day that changed my family. It was a day of joy and pride, and most of all, hope.
The Cosby Show went to the top of the ratings and stayed there. The series not only improved the image of African Americans in television comedy, it elevated an entire network.
It changed the fortunes of NBC in the 80s. No show, as much as The Cosby Show, changed the fortunes of NBC.
Coming up, a new wave of black comedies comes and goes on 3 new networks.
All I have is lipstick.
Write it on my heart.
Well, you know, that's the history of this country, basically. You know, you bring the African slaves in to build the fortunes, and then you discard them.
When we return with more of Inside TV Land. They overcame controversy and conflict to change the face of television. In honor of Black History Month, TV Land presents a landmark 3-part series. Inside stories from groundbreakers and those who followed them. Stories of pride, prejudice,
My life was threatened.
and progress.
You know, I see how far we really have come. I also see how far we need to go.
You're watching Inside TV Land, African Americans in television comedy. Stay tuned.
To Bill and the entire Cosby Show family, you are the NBC all-time champions. With love and appreciation, NBC.
The success of The Cosby Show was not only a landmark for African Americans in television, it revitalized situation comedy. As the 80s ended, The Cosby Show was the most popular program on TV. Cosby's triumph inspired a new wave of black comedy series, including The Cosby Show spin-off A Different World. Set at a black college, the series took a critical drubbing when it debuted in the fall of '87. Bill Cosby called on actress and director Debbie Allen to shake the show up.
He said to me, listen, little Miss Trash, he liked to call me Trash, very lovingly so. I want you to go out there and I want you to clean house. Get in there and make the show relevant, make it about something.
A Different World was, in one respect, a very different world. Not only did Cosby hire an African-American woman to run the series, he also hired black women for other roles behind the scenes.
You have Suzanne Fales, who African-American woman who was a producer of it. You have Debbie Allen, who directed episodes.
Okay, guys, I'm going to stay up here in the truck and do this scene.
Nima Barnett, African-American director, directed some episodes.
The ones that Debbie didn't want to do, but she did most of them, you know. And it was exciting to watch her work, because that was the only other black woman in television I had ever seen direct.
Black women were finally getting their chance in situation comedy without wearing an apron or dusting the house.
Hi, Frank.
Hi. Actress Daphne Reed and her husband, WKRP in Cincinnati star Tim Reed, brought their sitcom Frank's Place to CBS in 1987. Frank's Place was a place like no other on the air.
Did you know that there are more aspirin sold per person in New Orleans than in any other city in the United States?
I'm not surprised by that.
This stuff is hangover's worst enemy. It's called Mama Yaya.
Do I drink it or soak my feet in it?
I think Frank's Place was ahead of its time. It had no laugh track.
The other comedies that were on television, you were given your signal to laugh. It was a joke, ha ha ha. Frank's Place you really had to listen to.
I went to Brown, and then I...
Brown?
Yeah, I went to Brown. No!
Class of 71.
I wanted to change them all. I wanted to portray black people in a way that the network is not, and still is not, used to portraying them as human beings, as interesting, quirky characters.
What you so happy about?
I just met a brown man out there.
Well, is that so unusual, Frank?
Oh, yeah, I'm a brown man, too.
It was about a black community that supported each other. And it was about a variety of types of characters, black and white, that had never been seen before.
Episodes dealing with serious topics like suicide and racial discrimination within the black community drew critical praise.
All my life, I've been, quote, the only black. I was the only black in this class. I was the only black in that organization. I was only black on this team. Look, man, I'm not about to become the only black in a black club. I think that's going a little too far, don't you think?
Frank's Place was such a special show, a hard show, because the dramedy had not yet been perfected, but it was a wonderful show to be able to see black people being funny on such an intellectual level and we had not yet seen that in the show.
You're gonna love Mardi Gras, Brother Driver.
Still to this day, it's revered among the black community. I mean, people will come up to me and embrace me. I've had women in hats that come up to me and just say, "Come here, baby," and just put their arms around me and hug me.
But despite the positive press and a devoted fan base, Frank's Place never found a competitive place in the Nielsen ratings. It switched time slots several times and was canceled after less than 2 seasons.
It was baffling when it was canceled as to why.
Maybe it was a little too erudite for most, a little too non-obvious. I thought it was a very good show, but I wished it had gone longer so it could be judged better.
It was a rude awakening. It really took the bloom off the rose, and I don't think I'll ever be the same again.
Frank's Place did not attract the wide audience of The Cosby Show. However, in the fall of '90, NBC took another shot at the next big crossover hit with The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Legendary musician Quincy Jones pitched NBC a show that capitalized on the popularity of rap music and one of rap's brightest young stars, Will Smith.
Was that for me? I said yes. She said why? I said, come on and take a ride with a hell of a guy.
Quincy Jones came in, and Quincy said, you know, we got this young rapper, and he says, Will Smith.
This was full-on, full-court press, you know, and Quincy made it happen.
I was the only one in the room who watched Yo MTV Raps at the time. So when he said Will Smith, I knew who it was.
Now this is a story all about how my life got flipped, turned upside down, and I'd like to take a minute, just sit right there. I'll tell you how I became the prince of a town called Bel-Air.
First time that I was really acting was on the set of the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. I mean, now that's confidence or lunacy.
We had this guy from the ghetto in Philadelphia comes to live with his upper middle class relatives in Bel-Air. And so it was, you know, poor black versus the rich black.
Will! I never related to it because I didn't even believe that black people could live like that. So it just kind of seemed like a fairy tale to me. And I mean,
Oh, yo, the plane ride was stupid. I was up in first class, man. No, I'm saying the plane was dope. Excuse me? No, stupid, dope. Oh, no, that doesn't mean what you... how would he...
The flight was really neat, yeah.
Fresh Prince became a major hit for NBC, but it marked the end of an era for African Americans in network television comedy. By 1990, with more viewers turning to cable TV, little more than 50% of the total TV audience tuned in to the major networks.
When I first started, there were only 3 networks. Cable was no big deal. You either worked for ABC, NBC, or CBS. And then there came Fox.
The fledgling Fox network was trying to carve out its own share of the audience. Research showed that African American households watched 60% more television than white homes. That gave Fox executives an idea.
When you're starting a new network, you look for audiences that are underserved by the traditional networks. And African American audiences are traditionally a bit underserved by the major networks.
There's really more African Americans watching broadcast television than any other ethnic group as a percentage of the population. So what that means is that if you put on a show that targets African American viewers, you'll tend to get a higher number right out of the gate than you would if you were doing some other show.
The Fox network grew out of nothing by black programs. They would put on lots of shows with black members or all black casts. And that brought black viewers. And when black viewers started to watch, there are advertisers who want that multi-billion-dollar market.
In the early 90s, shows like Martin, Rock, and Living Single quickly established the Fox network's reputation as a risk-taker.
I found myself very dismayed with certain members of the black media who would complain until they were blue in the face about the lack of black shows or black female shows or young black intelligent adults. And yet when Living Single came and went, there were some covers that we still never got. There was some talk show exposure that we still didn't receive. And that is just a little incredible to me.
From the mid to late 90s, the audience gained by its black sitcoms helped to establish Fox as the 4th major network. But with success, Fox's color began to fade, as Rock, Living Single, and Martin were canceled.
This season, the Hughleys is all about the family.
Can't call me Dummy. Can't call me Doofus.
What am I going to call you?
Michael, the Vampire Slayer.
As Fox moved away from African American comedies, 2 new networks, the WB and UPN, offered new possibilities.
The Barkers are back for a new season.
Hey, boo. Oh, my God. I can't breathe. How long have we been in here? 3 minutes.
They followed Fox's model because when Fox did it, it was new. It was a breakthrough concept. Let's tap into this unserved market.
We took a tremendous amount of heat. I remember having advertisers say to me, oh, you've got all that black programming in it. I see.
I will fight for the woman I love.
The heat I got from the media when we were at UPN. They said Monday night was Black Comedy Night on UPN. And I said, does anybody look at NBC on Thursday night and say, it's White Comedy Night?
As with Fox before them, when the new network's audience shares increased, black comedies fell off their schedules.
They were all gone, and not gradually either. It was next.
I call it kindling. They started out like that with the kindling, and then once they get the fire, you know, they cut them.
At WB, there was a period where we had, I think, 5 African-American, predominantly African-American sitcoms on the network, and you couldn't sustain that if you were going to go to a 6-night or 7-night schedule.
When the 2001 fall season began, there were just 7 comedies on the 6 networks with predominantly African-American casts.
Mondays this fall, TV's sexiest comedy is back.
If he loves you, great. If he doesn't, burn some of his stuff, exhale, and move on.
As the 21st century began, the crossover triumph of The Cosby Show seemed like ancient television history.
Were there more Cosbys? That's the one rule Hollywood broke, because with every other hit, Felicity, Star Trek, immediately there were 800 different versions of space shows or young teenager shows.
The problem with black shows in particular is that they don't get nurturing time. You got to hit the ground running. Black shows just got to come out with it. Boom.
Coming up, the future of black TV comedy.
Why not just lay myself on the front porch and y'all can just use me as a welcome mat? How about that?
There's progress. Is the progress as swift as it should be? Well, no.
When we return with more of Inside TV Land.
The hardest part about raising a daughter
So, guys, what we doing tonight? Shipping or clubbing?
is that you have to grow up, too.
That little girl's gonna bust up our flow. Our flow? You mean the flow where I think of the fine women and you scoop up their drunk, ugly friends? Hey, man, ugly girls are loyal.
Haunted by the massive success of The Cosby Show, a new generation of African-American comedies struggled in vain to find a wide audience on the major networks.
I can't handle this.
By the end of the decade, the few black sitcoms still on the air were seen on new networks with a smaller pool of viewers.
Michael, what is the funniest show on television?
Seinfeld.
Wrong. The Hughley.
It's a pendulum. It goes over here and then it comes back over here. It's very inconsistent, I think. It may not even be swinging right now.
For all of this past pilot season, everything that all of my friends and I were seen for was the secretary, 3rd, 4th, 5th banana.
Get me somebody up in the big tower who is saying, this is what's going on television because I want it there and I'm black. Then I will see some difference in what television could become.
I want to know that I'm working behind the camera, too. I want some sense that the money that's being made here is being made by a wide variety of people.
There's progress, you know. Is the progress as swift as it should be? Well, no. But, you know, what do? You have to try to figure out how to make it happen.
Black sitcoms aren't entirely missing from network prime time. In 2001, Fox's Bernie Mac show got off to an encouraging start, and ABC found success with the Damon Wayans vehicle, My Wife and Kids.
You're starting to exhibit what some might call obsessive-compulsive behavior.
That is not true.
Yes, with some serious mood swings.
So what are you saying, Michael? What are you saying? You saying I'm an empty shell of a woman. That's what you're saying.
A couple of years ago, I think you wouldn't have seen, for example, Damon Wayans doing a family show back on television again.
When the black family sitcom The Hughleys was canceled by ABC after 2 seasons, it was resurrected by UPN in 2000.
I'm playing this new game called golf. What, you trying to get your ghetto pants revoked? Hey, Tiger Woods won the Masters.
Yeah, but Tiger's only part black, and you know that ain't the part that won the Masters.
I couldn't believe that ABC decided that they weren't going to pick it up, but they didn't, and we looked at it and thought, this show has a lot of life in it and a lot of good things about it, and we think our audience would enjoy it.
I was blessed to have a show that got canceled on one network and went to another. A lot of people his show's canceled and they go home. And fortunately, that didn't happen for us, and we're still able to tell the stories that we were, just a couple of spaces down the dot.
You on the slippery slope to losing your blackness.
Are you calling me a sellout?
Not yet, but your ads in the classifieds and your price to move.
Survival and success stories like the Hughleys give many African Americans in television comedy some sense of hope for the future.
I'd have to say it's getting better. And I'd have to say that they're doing a better job of diversifying some of the roles.
I'm very secure in my beliefs that we have a future as long as we believe it.
Comedy came in our history from being a slave and being able to make jokes light of the situation of how bad it was. And that's where comedy was born. We are like that. We are funny. We are the funny cats.
But one thing I don't want is somebody pretending to be my friend, but really thinking of me as the N-word.
They already think of you as the N-word.
Neighbor.
Television has given you The Cosby Show. It's given you Frank's Place. In some ways, we've come a long way, but there's still such a long way to go.
Let's go inside and fix some stuff, sugar.
All right.
Thank you.